Welcome to this week's edition of World Crisis Radio. This is Webster Tarpley reporting from Washington, D.C. Let's look at the situation on the economic and political fronts, and in particular on the question of the gas price. Are we reaching a moment where it might be possible to organize some mass forces to break free of all of the mechanisms of social control, to break free of the Democratic Party, to break free of the Republican Party, because we've got them too, to break free of the Ron Paul campaign, which is convoying people back into the Republican Party, to break free of Adbusters Foundation and other foundation-funded operatives that attempt to defend the Wall Street-based system by guaranteeing the impotence of the protests against it. Now, the boiling rage of the U.S. population against Wall Street is now, I think, beyond any doubt, and it is focused on the question of the gasoline price. We better focus that rage on the gasoline price, or it will be focused on some other target. And, of course, we've got all kinds of obfuscation going on. If you listen to National Public Radio this morning, you will have heard idiotic charlatans saying, oh, Obama can't do anything about the gasoline price. Nothing can be done. The president is powerless, and so forth. This is obviously simply not true, as we will demonstrate now in detail here in the first segment. We want to look at hearings that were held at the Democratic Steering and Policy Committee this week, the day before yesterday. This hearing, the Democratic Steering and Policy Committee, you can get the link to it on my Twitter feed, Webster G. Tarpley, Twitter, Webster G. Tarpley. You can get to that Twitter feed by going to tarpley.net, tarpley.net. Here we have two interesting witnesses. Professor Michael Greenberger, a former official of the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, and Gene Guilford, Guilford. This is the Connecticut Independent Petroleum Operators Association. It's essentially people who sell you heating oil in the state of Connecticut. Between the two, this is a powerful package. I would urge people to watch it. This went far beyond the intent of the Democratic hacks that organized these hearings. The point is that the price of oil ought to be between $60 and $70 per barrel at the present time, given the state of world demand, which is falling, at least in the United States, and not rising in the way that you've been told, and the question of world supply, which is increasing in spite all of the bankrupt charlatans, all of the cretins who embraced peak oil. There is no peak oil. Another fraud, another myth made up by hedge fund operators. So with supply rising and demand falling, the price should be going down, but the price is going up. How do we explain this apparent violation of the sacred laws of supply and demand, as Ron Paul might view it? It is because of speculation, by zombie bankers, by hedge fund hyenas, and by other financial interlopers. The extent of this is that, we can see right now the price of oil today about $105 to $106 a barrel. The price ought to be $65 to $70 a barrel. The difference is speculation. It means that at least one-third, so from 33% to 40% of the price you're paying is pure speculation. Wake up. It's not big government that's doing this. It's the lack of government regulation. It is deregulation that is causing this. And in particular, we would need to act specifically against speculation. Not just rail about it, not just criticize it, not complain, not camp in the park, but procure actual concrete measures to hit these speculators hard. And the specific measures are, and this is the interesting thing about these hearings, Professor Michael Greenberger proposes a ban on two kinds of derivatives. This is exactly what I've been proposing. I have focused in the past on collateralized debt obligations and credit default swaps as two very dangerous kinds of derivatives that must be banned with a bright line prohibition, outlawed, jail time, Fort Leavenworth. You do those, you go to jail. This is the way to hit Wall Street again. If you want to punish them, chastise them for their excesses, this is the way to go. And this is now the time. The two kinds that need to be banned, two kinds of toxic derivatives. The commodity index swap. The commodity index swap must be banned, outlawed, immediately, prohibited, bright line prohibition. Not only the commodity index swap, but also the synthetic exchange-traded fund. The synthetic exchange-traded fund must be banned, outlawed, no more. By outlawing the commodity index swap and the synthetic exchange-traded fund, you would cut into the technical means that are used by the hedge fund hyenas and the zombie bankers to drive up the price. This is occurring in the futures market. Now, there would be broader ways, right? You could go back to the Commodity Exchange Act, which would ban futures. In those days, it was on agricultural commodities. Now you could do it on other commodities as well. But I think since this is now on the table in the Congress, the commodity index swap and the synthetic exchange-traded fund would represent the leading edge of what needs to be banned. Now, of course, we here would supplement that with the across-the-board 1% Wall Street sales tax. So again, it's my method. Ban the most dangerous kinds of derivatives, tax the rest. A 1% tax will take the life out of the booze for these speculators. The idea then, therefore, is that since mid-December, in a period of approximately 90 days, the amount of cash that is being gouged out of the American people by these hedge fund hyenas and zombie bankers has increased by $10 billion per month. $10 billion per month, $2.5 billion per week. You can break it down in all different ways. But it is a hefty surtax, $120 billion a year at that rate, but the rate is going up. The rate is rising. Where's Ron Paul? Where are the libertarians on this issue? They're saying, oh no, less regulation, not more. Don't ban derivatives. Don't tax Wall Street turnover. Oh no, that would violate the Austrian school. These apologists of the ruling class have essentially been unmasked by their impotence and unwillingness to do anything to fight the real interests that are crushing the American people. We also learn in these interesting hearings that the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, as we've known, the Commodity Futures Trading Commission has the right to set, they have the power to set the margin requirements for speculators in the oil futures market. That is to say, if you want to buy an oil futures contract, how much of your own money do you need to put up? How much can you borrow? How much leverage can you have? Another way to express the same thing. It could be made 100%. It must be made 100%. When Obama says, I can't do anything about this, the answer is, hey, Obama, you're a liar. You can. Call up Gensler at the Commodity Futures Trading Commission and tell him to put a 100% margin requirement on those oil futures markets. And there's another one he can do, too. Back in a minute on World Crisis Radio. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Webster Tarpley in Washington, D.C. Remember, follow it all on tarpley.net, Twitter feed Webster G. Tarpley. We want to ban commodity index swaps. We want to ban synthetic exchange-traded funds. The Commodity Futures Trading Commission, headed by Goldman Sachs alumnus Gary Gensler, could immediately slap a 100% margin requirement on those parasitical speculators that are driving up the price of oil and of gasoline. That could be done immediately by simply an executive measure by the CFTC. They have the legal authority. Naturally, the hedge fund hyenas would then sue them and so forth. That's when presidential leadership would have to come into play. The other thing is position limits. How much of the market can you buy? Well, if you buy 100% of the oil market, you will have cornered it, and you can then charge anything you want for the oil that you've bought, at least in theory. Now, that is perhaps less likely to happen than what we've got now, which is an oligopoly of people who buy up 30, 40, 50% of the market at any given time. It's time for the Commodity Futures Trading Commission to issue a 5% position limit. You want to buy a piece of the oil market? Great. The upper limit is 5%. So, 100% margin, 5% position limit, ban commodity index swaps, ban synthetic exchange-traded funds. You would be on your way to cutting the price of oil by 1/3 to 1/2. And as they discussed also in these hearings, you can also do things like get an attorney general. If you had a real one, you could get an attorney general out there saying, I'm tasking a special Justice Department task force, a Get the Speculators task force, to look into violations of antitrust laws, violations of security laws, other violations. I'm going to have everything under a microscope. In other words, you want to chill the overheated hysteria of these speculators who are driving up the price. You could also, and this was not so much discussed, do a surprise attack, a sneak attack on the speculators by stating in general that you're going to, at some point in the future, unleash the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, and then some Sunday night hit them with a blindside attack in a way that will wipe out a significant number of these speculating firms, prevent the Federal Reserve from bailing out the ones that have gone bankrupt as a result of this action, right? If they're long the market, you drive the price down, they're going to take a bath, they're going to get a haircut. So there we have it. There was also some interesting discussion of what happened in 2008. The price of oil reached almost $150 a barrel in July. It was almost $30 by November, December. What had happened? Part of it portrayed by Greenberger to try to win support from these Democrats, was that there had been a bill, an anti-speculation bill, passed in the House in July in response to this oil speculation orgy binge. I would say, though, the main thing that was happening was that the zombie banks were faced with bankruptcy, and they were forced to sell the forward contracts that they had bought as a means of raising cash in desperation. So that gets back to what I'm saying. If you can hit them with the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, then you've done it. Now, there's a fighting program, and there's an issue that Joe Sixpack can understand. This is not some abstruse process reform that petty bourgeois observers like, such as, Glass-Steagall. Glass-Steagall is a fine thing, but if you go to Joe Sixpack and tell him that the answer to his problems is to separate commercial banking from investment banking, from speculation, that is a bridge too far. Rather, go to Joe Sixpack and tell him we can cut the price of oil in half by hitting Wall Street right now, hard, in the Labanza. That's what we need. So this, of course, again, violates, it contradicts the whole line of the Republicans, needless to say. We can be sure that Mitt Romney, or at least his firm, was out there leading the charge to speculate, to flay the American people alive. And Ron Paul, of course, would say, oh, no, you're violating the Austrian school. We need more deregulation. Deregulation is what got you where you are today. If you had the Commodity Exchange Act of 1936, if that had not been rolled back by stupid Reagan, then you wouldn't have a lot of these derivatives. As a matter of fact, derivatives in general would remain under a cloud where they belong. So there's that situation. Now, the other thing that we need to point to here at the beginning is we've got a problem of a reactionary offensive that is